For the Detroit Lions, this division rivalry game against the Green Bay Packers is obviously important. But for everything else that's riding on it that has implications not only for the rest of the NFL, but also for the Super Bowl race, it's even more important. We're going to talk about it, so stay tuned.
What are we? What makes us what we are and what we're going to be? It's grit. It's what we started with last year, guys. Doesn't matter if you have one ass cheek and three toes. I will beat your ass.
Can definitely compete with the big dogs.
10-5 end zone touchdown Detroit Lions.
You guys are unbelievable, man. I'm telling you.
We are driven by Detroit.
Hello, Detroit Lions friends and family members. Welcome on back to yet another episode of MCM Motor City Mania. I'm your host, David T. Pike, and as always, we're diving on in. When we take a look at today's episode, folks, what we're going to be talking about is how this game that we've got coming up against the Green Bay Packers, it's more than just a game of where we're trying to beat a division rival. It's more than just trying to get another win in the division race. This game has so much riding on it in terms of what it will mean to the Lions if we win it, that it holds immense value. I almost kind of hate to say it, but not only is this a division rivalry game, this game is almost kind of quintessentially also like a playoff matchup. And the reason I'm saying that is because it's quite likely we're probably going to have the Packers in the playoffs. And that also means that depending upon who the Packers play, so long as we continue to maintain our first, place seeding, we might see them at some point in said playoffs. But even there, this game has so much more importance on that. It has so much more importance than just that, pardon me. Let's understand what the Lions are currently at right now at this point in the year, per se. If we look back at last year, yes, the Lions started off the year very well, extremely well. But even last year's start is nowhere close, in my opinion, to this year. If you take a look at this year's 6-1 start, it is quite plainly obvious that the Lions are playing on a whole different level. It's not even close. Yeah, last year's team was really good. Last year's team could get and win a Super Bowl. But this year's team is just, again, playing on a level that is just absolutely out of this world. Again, 6-1 record. First time the Lions have done that since 1956. The Lions right now have the best record in the NFC, and they have the second best record in the NFL itself. So, yeah, the Lions are in a very, very good spot, in a very rare spot that they've been over the course of their franchise history. But, to kind of just use a phrase, because I don't think the Lions would ever do this because of Dan Campbell and just the way the team is built, the Lions just can't rest on their laurels here, because the next game they have against the Green Bay Packers, it holds immense value, it holds immense importance, not only to the NFC North Division race, but also to the rest of the NFL at large, and more precisely, the Super Bowl race. Again, let's just talk about the Packers here. Packers outside of the Bears are probably our most hated rival. I know that the Vikings are also rivals, but I've always gotten the impression that for Lions fans, the Packers and the Bears are the ones that we quite frankly despise the most, because the Vikings, yeah, we don't like them, but we can tolerate them a hell of a lot better than the Packers and the Bears. Those two teams are always so smug and so high and mighty and just absolutely arrogant as hell that we can't stand them. But as much as it is important to try and get wins over division rivals, this kind of game is important more than just that. Because I'll admit, I love nothing better than winning over division rivals, especially the Packers and Bears, because I love the absolutely deliciously enjoyable ability to watch their fans just writhe in mental and emotional agony for a week. I love seeing that, because when we beat those teams, they absolutely cannot stand it. They will just absolutely turn inside out on themselves, because to them, losing against us is just unfathomable. or unfathomable, pardon me. And it's always fun to watch because they will just literally lose themselves. But outside of that, the division rivalry game we've got coming up against the Packers, it's far bigger than just winning and executing some well-deserved ass-kicking followed by some gloating. It is about setting a clear and undeniable line in the sand that no one, and I mean this, no one in the NFC is on our level. It's to show everyone else that in the NFC, everyone else is following our lead and that they have to submit to the Lions' supremacy. And yes, I use that word specifically because when I take a look at the NFC, there's not a damn team, in my honest opinion, that comes close to us. And I know that sounds biased as hell, and maybe I am a little bit, but I'm about to show you why I have that opinion and why that factors into this whole situation. Because if you take a look at the games that the Lions have already previously played, we've played 7 games. 6 of those games have been against NFC teams. One of them against an NFC division opponent. Well, of the 6 games that we have played, we've only lost one of them. And to be entirely honest, that was quite a bit of a fluky loss to the freaking Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Because I'm going to tell you this right now. While the Bucs were a good team when we played them, I don't know how I would describe them right now, considering the fact that they've lost quite a couple of players. But if we were to play them under the same set of circumstances in terms of health and location, based upon what we are doing right now, it wouldn't even be a contest. That's why I call it fluky. If we had the kind of dynamic we had right now with our offense being completely figured out, that wouldn't even be a contest. So that's why I call that one a fluke. But if you take a look outside of that even, the other games that we played are against some of the games that we've played have been against potential playoff teams, such as the Rams, the Cardinals, the Seahawks. Those are teams, that potentially could make the playoffs because, okay, when the Rams are healthy, they're a pretty damn good team. The Cardinals, they're actually showing that they're competitive this year. The Seahawks, they're always competitive. Then on top of that, we've obviously played a team that will most likely go to the playoffs, and that's the Vikings. And all of those teams that I just mentioned, we've beaten. And then we played the Cowboys, which even though the Cowboys, I don't think have a chance in hell getting to the playoffs, but the reason I'm talking about them is because every single year, for whatever damn reason, they always get this, mindset, or they always get this look in the media that somehow they're going to be able to do something this year. And the fans about the Cowboys get this misplaced notion that somehow this year's their year when it never is. But still, the Cowboys are such a recognized brand that, okay, beating them definitely means something. So, that's where the Lions have been over the last, 6 games against the NFC. And then obviously we had the one game against the AFC team, the Titans, where we just absolutely, spanked them back to freaking the Stone Age. So what I'm trying to get at here is, for me, the Lions are quite literally a team where I don't know who else in the NFC quite literally is going to be able to stack up with us. Now, I know for some people that might not necessarily be Lions fans, or others that are a little bit more on the conservative side of this are going to be like, well, David, that all sounds great, grand, and glorious here, but is there any sort of actual ability for you to back up all this bravado and grandstanding, grand gesturing that you're doing, especially with the Packers that we're getting set to play, who are 6-2? Okay, let's take a look at that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put up the stats of the Lions offense and the Lions defense against the Packers offense and the Packers defense, because that is the team that we're getting set to play here. Let's start the comparative analysis, shall we? When you take a look at the Lions offensive statistics, just through the first 7 games that they have played, you're going to get a rather clear picture about just how damn dominant our offense is. First and foremost, every single statistical category except for 2 on the list of stats that I have is within the top 10. But There is one stat that is on that list that is absolutely just wild. It's the points scored stat. That stat says that we have scored 234 points, which is fourth best. But understand something here, folks. We're fourth best in the NFL in that category, but we've only played 7 games, whereas everybody that's above us, so position 3, 2, and 1, they've all played 8. And I think the person that's in the number 1 spot is literally, I think, less than 10 points in front of us. So we've played a whole less game, but yet we're only 10 points less removed from the current front runner in terms of points scored. And then when you put that into consideration with all the other statistics that we are literally, top 10, top 5 in, you get a very, very clear picture that this is an offense that is playing on a completely different level to the rest of the damn league. So, okay, that is our juggernaut offense right there. What about the Packers defense? The team that we're getting set to go against and that unit that has to go against our freaking offense. Well, when we take a look at the Packers defense, I'm going to say this right now. The Packers defense, as far as statistical rankings are concerned, it's not bad, not by any stretch of the imagination. In fact, I would say, if I'm being fair here, even as a Lions fan, their defense statistically is above average. It's not top 10 statistical, but it is within, I'd say that 12 to 16 range. It's good enough to where it's like, okay, here, for the most part, they can contend, they can work against some decent offenses, but they're not in a level where it's like, okay, they can do stuff on their own to where they can make a difference and win games on their own. They're close, but they're not quite there. And the way I can say this is because when you take a look at all of their statistics, most of them are well within that 12 to 16 range. There's very few, actually, that are in the side of the top 10, and there's some of them that are actually at the bottom towards the 20 and 30 range. So that's why I'm saying when you measure it all out, it's kind of right there in that above average range. But again, Packers defense, I would say, is a above average to good defense, but it's not a great defense. It's a defense where it's like, okay, here, it's going to present something of a challenge, but let's understand something here. We've already played 2 defenses where it already was kind of supposedly, at least statistically, a challenge, because the Titans defense, as I already presented last week, was one of the best statistically. And then the Vikings on top of that was also one. And our offense was able to score, if I recall correctly, between both sets of games. Let's see, we scored 31 against the Vikings, and if we take 52 and subtract 7 from that, that's what? That's 45 points? So 45 plus 31, I mean, we're talking about almost damn near 80 points in those 2 games against supposedly 2 of the best statistical defenses in the NFL. So, go figure. So, that's the Lions offense and the Packers defense comparison. Now, let's talk about the Lions defense and the Packers offense in the same comparison. When we take a look at the Lions defense, I've said this before, I'll say it again. When it comes to the qualitative statistics of our defense, we're lights out. We're top 10 in points given up. We're top 10 in freaking, passer rating given up. Actually, top 3, pardon me. We're top 5 in rushing yards given up. We're top 3 in third down percent. We're top 3 in fourth down percentage. Top 10 in red zone percentage. We literally, when it comes to the ability to stop opposing teams when it absolutely matters most, the qualitative measurements, we get the job done. But when it comes to quantitative measurements, such as pass yards, such as, what's the passing completion percentage, what's the yard per play, blah, 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 stuff like that, that's where we kind of fall off a little bit. We might give up a hell of a lot of yards, but when it comes to actually giving up the things that are truly important, such as points, conversions on critical downs, we put the clamps on people. Okay, so that's the Lions defense. What about the Packers offense? The Packers offense, not gonna lie, it's a damn good offense. But the problem with the Packers offense is that they're an offense that is built on just absolutely running up, the stats. Because the one thing I have noticed about their offense is that where our defense is really good in the qualitative measurements, their offense in said same qualitative measurements, it's kind of a little bit lacking. Again, you take a look at their third down conversion percentage rate. It's just inside of top 16. You take a look at their fourth down conversion percentage rate. It's just outside of top 16. Their scoring drive percentage is top 10, but somehow their red zone percentage is damn near towards the bottom of the list. So what I'm trying to get at here is that their offense is quite literally the exact opposite of our defense. Oh, yeah, they've got the ability to say, oh, yeah, we have all these passing yards, we have all these rushing yards, blah, 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 blah. But when it comes to the qualitative ability to, oh, can we convert on critical downs? When we're in the red zone, can we actually score points? That's where they're lacking. And that is the huge problem for the Packers offense is that, okay, they can generate a hell of a lot of yards. But outside of that, they're kind of a little bit, fraudulent. So, that's the Lions offense versus the Packers defense. So, okay, it already kind of looks like the Lions should, in theory, have the upper edge on them in terms of what we just saw from both units comparing against each other, offenses and defenses. But I'm talking about this game being more important than just what it means to the actual NFC North division race, and it is. Again, to kind of just go back outside of the Lions and Packers game that we're talking about right now, if we beat the Packers quite literally, other than the Washington Commanders, are the next best record in the NFC. Well, again, the Packers are inside of our division. We don't play the Commanders this year, so this game is quite literally the NFC's, I would say, last realistic chance of being able to try and bring the Lions back down to earth. Now, that brings me to this point. Who else really in the NFC, other than the Packers that we play this week, could really pose a challenge to the Lions, or could try to say they pose a challenge to the Lions? Let's think about this. The Bears, maybe? Okay, let's talk about the Bears. The problem with them is that we don't play them until a month from now. Okay, if you take a look at the Lions' next 4 games, and you take a look at the Bears' next 4 games, I'm going to put it quite frankly. I think by that time, the Lions could be 10-1 and the Bears could be 5-6. The Lions' next 4 games are, as we know, the Packers this week, the Texans next week, the Jags, and then the Colts. The Jags and the Colts, I have absolutely no worries about. The Texans, they're a good team, but they've kind of been struggling against teams that are not nearly as good. Like, hey, they barely beat the Colts last week with Anthony Richardson at quarterback. They won 27-20. So I think we can also play well against the Texans. Even though that's a great defense, I think we can play well against them. So the only team that really at this point on our schedule, until we get to the Bears, that presents a actual challenge, in my opinion, like a good serious challenge, is the Packers. But the Bears' next 4 opponents are the Cardinals, the Patriots, the Packers, the Vikings. Like I said, the Cardinals are actually competitive this year, so you can't sleep on them. The Patriots, okay, yeah, I expect you to win that one. You should win that one. The Packers, same thing we're talking about with the Lions here. The Vikings, they're actually a playoff team this year as well. So, okay, the Bears over the next month have at least 3 different games against either potential playoff teams or teams that are most likely going to be in the playoffs, whereas the Lions are really only having to deal with that on 2 different fronts, and one of them hasn't been playing that well this year in comparison to where most people thought they would be. So, like I said, that already kind of gives the Lions an edge, if you will, by the time we play the Bears. But let's also think about it. The Bears just had a loss against the Commanders that, I'm telling you this, the type of loss they just sustained against the Commanders is the one that kind of breaks teams. That kind of a loss literally has the potential of just destroying the team's confidence and destroying the team's camaraderie. So, in my honest opinion, I think the Bears are okay as far as talent is concerned. They have a talented roster, but if you take a look at the teams they've already beaten this year, because they're 4-3, the only teams they've beaten so far are either teams that are absolutely bad on principle, or they played them at the time where their freaking team was absolutely decimated with injury, because they beat the Titans, who suck. They beat the Panthers, who suck. They beat the Jaguars, who suck. The only team that they've beaten that they can say anything about would be the Rams. But at the time they beat the Rams absolutely had nothing to work with. So yeah, I'm quaking in my boots when I'm talking about the Bears here. So okay, that's the Bears. What about the 49ers? 49ers are definitely a damn good team. They're one of the best teams in the NFL when healthy. But that's the problem. They have hardly, if ever, been healthy this year. I mean, for crying out loud, they're dealing with multiple players that are on IR. They're dealing with the fact that CMC has not played all year because he's freaking had freaking tendonitis in both of his Achilles. So it's like, dude, this freaking 49ers team, it is not even close to what it normally is. And you've seen how when just their freaking best players are not playing, it's not the same team. You take the Lions' best players out in some cases, we can still keep on rolling. We didn't have Hutch last game. We didn't have JMO. We've had Montgomery who was injured the game before last. We can still keep rolling. But for the freaking 49ers, they lose Brandon Ayuk, CMCC can't freaking, play because of the tendonitis I just said about. They've had other guys that can't play, such as Hargrave, Greenlaw, and all these others, and all of a sudden, they are no longer the same team. And then on top of that, Brock Purdy kind of turns into an average quarterback. So it's like, okay here, the 49ers, when they're fully healthy, yeah, they're definitely a damn good team. But they haven't been healthy this year. And when we consider when we play them, it's the second to last game of the year when we finally play the 49ers. I'm just going to put it quite plainly, putting it in the same perspective I did with the freaking Bears in their schedule. By the time we get to play the freaking, 49ers, we might literally already have the NFC completely locked down just based off of how many wins we have. Because I'm just going to say it right now. Even if the freaking 49ers were somehow to win like most of their games, they would most likely still be 2 games removed from us in terms of the actual overall win record. So again, I just don't really see the 49ers being able to catch us this year unless for some oddball reason with, getting back the couple of guys that they can, they all of a sudden recapture their form, which that could happen, but I think it's more unlikely. And then, like I said, there's the Commanders. Okay, the Commanders have been playing well this year. The Commanders are doing extremely well. Jaden Daniels is most likely going to get Offensive Rookie of the Year. Dan Quinn has pretty much been able to kind of build a culture out in Washington, much the same way Dan Campbell has done here in freaking Detroit. And they've been able to do something that I don't think anybody was expecting from the Commanders. People thought the Commanders were going to be a decent team this year, yes. But nobody, I think, was expecting them to be freaking 6-2. That's a little bit of an anomaly. But again, even though that's good for the Commanders, we don't play them this year in terms of the regular season. The only time we would most likely see them is if we meet them in the playoffs, which I'm not saying we wouldn't, but chances are, again, if the Lions maintain their first seed place, they would have to play somebody else and beat them before they could play us potentially. And again, that they could potentially get that far. But one thing I know about rookie quarterbacks in the playoffs, it's not typically a good match made in heaven for them. Obviously, last year, C.J. Stroud did, pretty damn well. But again, typically rookie quarterbacks don't do very well in the playoffs. They have to kind of go through their growing pains there a little bit. But my whole point is, to kind of wrap this whole thing up, is that outside of the Commanders, who we don't really play, and the fact that we're playing the Packers this week, which I just said we should be able to match up and, do well against them statistically, the 49ers, who have not been able to play very well all year because they haven't really been healthy all year, and then everybody else is kind of like, whatever. They might have, winning records, but who have they really beaten? AKA the Bears. So for me, it's like, okay, there's nobody else really in the NFC that either, 1, we haven't already played and beaten, or 2, that actually we're going to play that can really measure up to us. So that's why I'm saying, for me, I don't think there's anybody else of substance in the NFC that really will be able to challenge us outside of the Packers that we play this week. So that's why beating the Packers is vital to the Lions. Because not only does it move the Lions to 7-1 and also 2-0 in the division race, but it also firmly establishes three things. Number one, the Lions are the best team, undisputed, in the NFC North. Once the Lions beat the freaking Packers, especially on the road, and also get to 7-1 and 2-0 in the division race, if that should happen, we're the best team in the NFC. There's no way around that. And we're the best team in the NFC North. Also, no way around that. The second thing it firmly establishes, the Lions are the best team in the NFC, as I stated, but we're also the clear Super Bowl favorites from said conference. Some people might think that that's already been established, but it's like, dude, you're always going to have somebody that's going to say, well, you haven't done this, you haven't done that. Once we beat the Packers, who the hell else is going to be able to say that? That's left on our schedule. Who else is going to be able to say that? I literally just went through that. And then the third thing it finally establishes is this, and this brings us back to the Packers to kind of end this whole thing off. The Lions can take the absolutely just delicious, grotesque pleasure in knowing that Packers fans will be absolutely wailing, crying crocodile tears because they know their time is up. Because think about it. If we beat the Packers for freaking, this time, I think this will be the fourth time in a row we've gone out to freaking Lambeau Field and beaten them. It might not be the fourth time in a row considering the venue or whatever, but to go out to Lambeau 4 straight times and beat them on their turf, dude, that used to be something that we could never do. Every time we went out to Lambeau, it was always a loss. But if we can go out to Lambeau for 4 straight times and still beat them there, dude, as far as I'm concerned, that's it. Your time's up and over with. Now, I know Packers fans are going to try and just say whatever, but c'est la vie. But anyway, having said that, I'm going to end this episode and say thank you all for watching another episode of MCM Motor City Mania. If you like what you saw, by all means, highly encourage y'all to watch the next episode. Also encourage y'all to please make sure you subscribe to the channel because it also helps out. But please, while you're subscribing, if you haven't done so already, make sure you hit that bell notification icon so that way you guys never miss any more content I push out. Also want to encourage y'all to share the content with your Lions friends and family members. Share it here on YouTube, share it on Twitter, share it on Facebook, share it everywhere and anywhere you possibly can. Because the more we can do that, the greater the channel can grow, the greater the channel can spread. And with that being said, I hope everybody enjoyed the content. Whether you've been a long-time viewer or this is your first time viewing me, I hope you also got something out of the content. Also hope that everybody has something in their life that makes them happy, makes them smile. God bless, my friends. And until the next time we meet, I'll see you all in the next episode.